here's my review of No Hard Feelings. I thought this was a really funny comedy. I mean, I wouldn't really say it's like the best comedy of the year. Like, my personal favorite is probably like CB from earlier this year. Um, but I'd say this might be up there. It's a very simple premise. It's like a classic rom-com where this Uber driver named Maddie gets her car repossessed because she didn't pay her taxes or whatever. So in return, she offers to date the wealthy son, like the son of a wealthy guy named Percy. Well, the kid's named Percy. And because he's super insecure and very socially awkward, and he's starting college, so they want to break him out of his shell. So yeah, at the beginning, like, there's a really funny scene where her car's about to be repossessed, and she tries to, like, say, oh no, we used to date each other, please don't. But then, like, the super muscular guy comes out, and they were obviously, like, she'd basically be cheating on him. Which, they weren't dating, technically, but, like, so that was a really funny scene. And a lot of this movie is just kind of, like, scenes between Maddie and Percy, like, and her just trying to, like, help this kid. And I thought that it was a really funny movie. Like, the scene where she's almost, like, trying to kind of flirt with him, but he doesn't really understand, like, kind of the cues, or doesn't really understand flirting. Then she gets pepper sprayed because he thinks he's being kidnapped. Is just hilarious. And so, yeah, it was cool to see. I mean, you got Ferris Bueller in this movie. I mean, that was just fun to see. I mean, hey, Matthew Broderick, come on. So, yeah, basically, these parents hire this girl. They're basically just hiring her as a prostitute. That's basically, in layman's terms, these parents hire a prostitute for their son because he's so socially awkward, has no friends, and they're really nervous about him. And, like, yeah, that is such a bizarre concept, but in the fact that this is basically based on a real ad, and this actually well, apparently, like, was a real Craigslist ad. There was this wealthy couple trying to, like, buy a prostitute, but apparently they didn't look in to see if anything actually happened. So this is basically a what-if scenario. It's a movie where you're like, wow, this is really weird. But it is really funny. Especially, like, the scene, like, at the animal shelter. That was a really funny scene. But a lot of this movie, I think what I really like about this movie is, a lot of it, there's a good mix of comedy between kind of, like, raunchy comedy, but also really fun slapstick. Like, when she's, like, on the car, and then he's driving, like, 50 miles an hour, and then she just gets drove into the beach. That's kind of towards the end of the movie. That was a lot of fun. And yeah, there's just a lot to like about this movie. Also, the scene where she's almost, like, chasing after Percy. It's just, like, basically a whole-on Shining reference. That was a lot of fun to see. And, of course, like, when they're at the beach and then they get their clothes stolen was hilarious. So, yeah, it's little scenes like that. Like, a movie like this, I don't really think there's really that much depth. I'd say there's a little bit, because Maddie kind of talks about, like, how her father, like, left her, or she didn't really get to see him that much. And then Percy kind of talks about why he's so insecure and nervous. And there's some sweet scenes between them. But I'd say it's mostly comedy, but I will say that definitely does elevate it, because there's definitely more heart. And I think one of the conflicts in the movie is Percy actually starts to get real feelings for Maddie. So that kind of, like, creates, like, a roadblock for them. And, of course, like, a lot of these movies, there's a classic liar reveal trope. Like, of course, Percy finds out that this was a setup, and then is, oh, you lied to me, etc. It's one of those things. I mean, you've seen that done a million times. But, I mean, like, overall, this is a very solid comedy. I mean, I thought that it was really funny, and I didn't really have that many complaints. I thought it was just a really funny comedy. I wouldn't say it's definitely not my favorite comedy of the year, but overall, it's a really fun time. And, I mean, Jennifer Lawrence is a very charismatic actress. I mean, it's Jennifer Lawrence, of course. And I thought that this kid did a really good job of being very, very insecure and socially awkward, but yet likable. So, like, even though, because he's kind of, like, quiet and timid, he still kind of, like, has enough personality for you to care about him. And he kind of still talks about it, even though, like, one of the whole points is he doesn't really have that many friends and doesn't really get out of his shell. So overall, yeah, I thought this was a really funny movie. I thought that it was a good time.